One-time Washington, D.C. lobbyist Jack Abramoff has been in a federal prison for just about 2 years, having served half of a reduced 4-year sentence for his part in a lobbying scandal that defrauded several Indian tribes. But author Gary Chafetz, who has had exclusive access to Abramoff for 4 years, says Abramoff was browbeaten into confessing the crime, and it is the subject of his new book, The Perfect Villain. And Gary Chafetz is here. Gary, he really was the perfect villain with the hat, the fedora hat, the black trench coat. I mean, come on. He was central casting.
You couldn't, exactly.
And he confessed.
Well, of course he confessed. You and I would confess. If the feds come to you and they say, and they have a 95.5% conviction rate, if they come to you and they say, look, we're going to find you guilty of something. There are going to be serial trials that will go on for 10 to 15 years. You will be bankrupted with legal fees. And when we find you guilty of some technicality, because everyone's guilty of something, we'll put you in prison for 30 years with violent offenders, or you can plead guilty to whatever we stipulate, cooperate, and we'll put you in a cushy prison camp, and you'll be out in 3 or 4 years.
What he did was fairly complicated, or what he was convicted of, which is representing sort of on both ends of the stick Indian casino tribes and eventually getting millions of dollars for himself that were supposed to go to these tribes. But even in this reduced sentencing hearing a couple of months ago, he said, he admitted that he had sort of a philandering attitude about it, that he was politically and business-wise corrupt. And he, having spent a few years in jail, was he just saying that because he wanted to reduce his sentence?
Well, the problem when you're dealing with federal prosecutors is that if he says, I wasn't guilty, I simply pled guilty because I had to, because I was afraid not to, he could be charged with perjury.
Did he say that to you, though?
Well, I can't officially say that. Because he has to be careful. He doesn't want to be charged with perjury. He doesn't want the judge to think that he's insincerely remorseful. The problem is that, Abramoff is the victim of a perfect storm. I mean, we felt guilty about what we did to the Indians, and here was this guy, this symbol of, exploiting the Indians and taking advantage of these poor, gullible, unsophisticated
Well, that's a whole
Indians.
other story,
Well, unfortunately, these Indians happen to run $500 million tribal casinos that could hire the best lawyers, accountants, consultants, and lobbyists. They were hardly unsophisticated. They kept hiring Abramoff year after year, in some cases for 10 years, because he was the best lobbyist. He never defrauded any of his Indian clients. You look at the evidence is incontrovertible. He never bribed any congressman. He didn't have to. He was good at what he did. And he not guilty of tax evasion. The feds owe him $1.7 million in a tax refund. In fact,
he owes $23 million back, so he's going to have a hard time collecting
right.
that.
He has to pay back.
But wait, you have this theory, though, or he does, sort of through you, that this is all a big payback from John McCain, that because Jack Abramoff was allegedly behind the smear campaign, that John McCain had fathered a black child back in 2000 when he was running for president, and that now John McCain prosecuted him as payback.
Well, I know for a fact that when the Washington Post ran its first story on January 22, 2004, within a nanosecond, John McCain launched his probe. He was a senior member of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee, soon to be the chairman. And he hired his top investigator, Pablo Carrillo, in a nanosecond. It happened to be at 10 o'clock the following morning. Now, it's true that Abramoff did fund the Black Baby Smear campaign. He didn't know that it was going to be this campaign. When McCain unexpectedly had this huge upset victory in New Hampshire in February 2, all the arch Republicans went ballistic. They did not want McCain to be their president. So Ralph Reed called up his best buddy, Jack Abramoff, and said, we got to stop this guy. And Abramoff, within a couple of nanoseconds, raised $3 million, handed it to Ralph Reed. He didn't know what Ralph was going to do with it, and we all know that Ralph and Karl Rove, orchestrated this despicable campaign, because in fact this black baby
Was his
was
adopted-
adopted child from a Bangladeshi orphanage established by Mother Teresa. You can't do anything more noble than that.
One of the things that surprised me in your book, Gary, because I know you, I should say we're friends, but you blame the media more than once for what happened to Jack Abramoff. Really?
I know. I mean, I'm a liberal. I love the Washington Post. You know, I don't like Jack Abramoff's politics, and here I am defending Jack Abramoff. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, except the facts don't leave me any choice. So I look at the Washington Post, and sure, the early stories were misleading, but I probably would have written them the same way because I wasn't an Indian country expert. But there is one story on September 26th, 2004, which appears to me to be a deliberate, knowing falsification. It was the most sensational story of all. In fact, you even referred to it earlier when Abramoff was accused of shutting down an Indian tribe in Texas so that he could pop up the next day as its savior and charge them $4 million to get them a federal exemption to get them reopened. That story is false. And I can prove that, and I think demonstrate that incontrovertibly using the Washington Post's own stories. And I think as a result that their 2006 Pulitzer Prize should be revoked.
What was it like dealing with him personally? You tell these great stories about meeting him in various restaurants. He's kosher, and by the way, he says he shouldn't have worn the fedora, but he wanted to put something over his head, and he thought it would be too awkward to wear a yarmulke. But what was it like meeting with him in these places?
Well, you know, there were 20 people trying to meet him, authors and reporters and filmmakers, and I, if I can use the word, inveigled my way in and talked him into talking to me and won his confidence. And I became, you know, not his best friend, but seemingly his best friend. I mean, he wanted me to drive him to prison, and I couldn't.
It sounded
do
like
that.
you did, no? You didn't.
No, I did not, but I was there when he arrived.
Have you seen him since he's been there?
I've been there 13 times. I've visited
Really?
him 13
How's he
times in
doing?
prison.
He lost that weight you said he gained?
He has lost the weight. The prison food isn't very good, and they don't serve very good kosher food. But, you know, Abramoff has his religion. I would have had a nervous breakdown, or I would have committed suicide if something like this had happened to me. But he has his religion, he's funny, he's relaxed. I mean, he's certainly devastated. I mean, he's broke. His wife lives in a house, they have a roof leak, they can't fix it. She has boarders living in the house to help pay, and the man is destroyed.
So 2012 now he's going to get? I thought this sentence was reduced.
Well, it wasn't really, because the judge gave him more than the prosecutors recommended.
That's right.
And
the
then
first judge.
didn't give him 22 months for time served.
Yeah.
So
Those feds are tough.
stay away from them.
Gary, he's lucky he has you as a friend. All right. The perfect villain. Gary Chafetz, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, and that is it for Greater Boston. Tomorrow night, homeowners who locked in prices on home heating oil now want a mulligan. Plus, author Beth Titel with her book, Drinking Problems at the Fountain of Youth. That and more tomorrow at 7. I'm Emily Rooney. Good night.